Hey, Joe.
Hey, Dave Scott, what's up, man?
Not too much. How you doing?
Everything's good. Good to see you. How's life?
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Can't, can't complain.
All right. Well, so you're coming back to Kansas City.
Yes.
So I got to tell you, I don't know if Terry told you this, but there was somebody out there that had a shirt with your name on it, and she
Really?
immediately leaped up and bought it, and it was a guitarist. It was a scam, and they sent her the shirts,
Oh,
and they refunded her. But we have Dave Scott shirts with guitars, and I remember seeing it, and I was like, Dave.
well,
Not
there's this thing. People have been hacking musicians on Facebook,
Yeah,
and I got hacked. A bunch of people have been getting where, and they to sell T-shirts.
yeah, yeah. So that's
Yeah.
what it was. It was some thing, but thankfully, it wasn't some nefarious thing where she couldn't get her money back. But at the end of the day, she bought a shirt for me and her, and we got the shirts, and she got her money back. So you've been immortalized as a guitar player too.
Yeah, they didn't even get the instrument right.
No, I know. It's like the whole thing was backwards, but now it's just like an internal joke with us. We're like, hey, we're Dave Scott's biggest fans. So, but at any rate, man, so along with the trip to Kansas City, setting standards is the new album. Is that something you're going to kind of delve into when you get here? New material?
Um, Probably not so much. I'm doing 3 gigs. One of them is Michael Eaton, the tenor sax
Yeah,
player,
yeah.
and that's his gig, and it's called. Let me see. He sent me a text with all the info. Uh, anyway, we're playing on the 26th,
Okay,
Westport Coffeehouse Theater,
okay,
and I believe it starts at 6. I'm pretty sure we do 2 sets.
okay,
Anyway, but we do, and he has the band is called Multiple Worlds,
okay.
and Michael is the leader. And I don't know, you're familiar with Michael, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, he's a Kansas City guy,
Yeah.
Kansas City native, but he lives here and plays here in New York. I played on one of his recordings a couple of years ago with Tim Hagens, the great trumpet player, and Judy Silvano sang on one of the tracks. Really great stuff.
Yeah.
More open stuff, kind of pretty complex odd meters, you know, uh, complex harmonic stuff, but then also some open stuff with less harmonic structures. So, but
Yeah.
very cool music. So anyway, and the band on that day is his Michael's compositions are a little more, yeah, I would say, yeah, a little more progressive, sort of,
Yeah.
But Isaiah Petrie, the great
Oh
vibe,
yeah.
he's great, man.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
Smoking good.
young guy, really great. And Sebastian Arias, who I haven't played with yet, but I have heard about him, very good bass player. And then Marty Morrison, my good friend Marty Morrison on drums.
From Hannibal, Missouri. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll be playing Michael's original music. So
Okay.
yeah, Marty's from Hannibal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally. So
and
that's
Marty.
one so that's one gig, and then you got two more?
Yeah, so then Friday the 27th,
Uh-huh.
I'm leading a quintet at the Blue Room,
Oh, right on. Okay.
and we'll be doing some of mostly my original music. We might throw in a standard.
Yeah.
Uh, and the band on that night is Matt Otto.
Yeah.
I've known Matt. I don't know. I may have told you this. I knew Matt when I lived in Los Angeles in the late '80s. And when I moved to LA, moved out there in '88. And I was playing this steady gig at this club every Sunday night, and Matt was like 17 or something, still in high school, I think.
Yeah.
And he would come and sit in with us. He was a good friend of the drummers,
Yeah.
and he would come and sit in with us. So I've known Matt since then.
Yeah.
He would just come and play the gig with us for no money, because he just wanted to play.
Yeah.
And he was great then.
Yeah.
You could tell that he was very talented and very dedicated.
Yeah.
And now he ends up in Kansas City, of all places.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and He's teaching at KU full
Uh-huh.
time. So anyway, so Matt on tenor, and then this piano Ken Keener. I'm sure you're familiar with.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Ken lives in Jefferson City,
Yeah.
but he's I've known Ken too for many years, and great talent, great pianist. And he's not always available, but he was available for this gig. And then Ben Torvort on
Yep.
bass,
Yep.
and Ben Young guy, very good, and Marty, my good friend Marty
Yeah.
Morris on drums. And we'll be, like I said, we'll be playing uh, mostly my original compositions, but like I said, we might throw in a standard or the blues or something.
Yeah.
And it's always great playing at the Blue Room.
Yeah.
Uh, we do two sets from 8:30 and I believe it's 10.
Okay.
10
Yeah.
two sets. It might be 10:30. I can look it up.
I,
I'm
I
sorry, I should have had this info ready.
yeah, no, I think you're right. I actually just caught Warren Wolf there a few weeks ago, which was phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
He just had an album that came out that was the history of the vibes and went through all the cats that from the early
Oh wow.
vibraphone
That's
days.
cool.
But it was 8:30. I believe it was 8:30 and then 10:30 was the next one.
Yeah,
So
I think that
that's
could be. Oh yeah, eight. Oh no, it says 8:30 and 10.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, that makes
General
sense.
total. Yeah,
Yeah. So
and
that so yeah, so
on the 20th,
that'll be
yeah,
Friday. And
Friday on the
then
27th. Yeah,
yeah. And then what's the third show? Third and final show?
I'm doing this. The big band thing I did with Tim Brewer.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're doing that on the 29th, Sunday the 29th,
Okay.
at back at the Westport Coffeehouse Theater.
Okay. Cool.
And Mike Parkinson, Mike, he's
Uh-huh.
going to conduct the music, and but we've done it before. We did it at the Blue Room once, and then last year we did it at the Coffee House. And I'm not sure who all's in the band. I know Tim puts the band together, and it's all Kansas City guys.
Yeah.
And uh, but we're going to play one set of some of my music, and then also I'm going to feature. There are a couple of tunes that uh, I think you knew Kim Richmond, right, or knew of him.
Yeah.
Great saxophonist, composer, arranger who lived in Los Angeles, and I've known Kim knew him for many years, but he passed away a couple of months ago,
Okay.
and he had cancer, and but a great musician, prolific writer,
Yeah.
and so he had written a couple of pieces for me, one that my parents commissioned him to write,
Yeah.
and then another one he wrote. I can tell you a little story about it if you want to hear
Yeah,
it.
please do. Yeah.
Anyway, so I was anyway. We're going to do two tunes that Kim wrote for me, and then we're going to do a couple of my compositions, and then the second set will be
Yeah.
Tim's compositions.
Yeah.
And anyway, so this was, man, I don't know. I had moved to New York, and I left Los Angeles and came to New York in 2000, and I had gone out there for the holidays to LA. My sister lives out there and her family. And so I went over to Kim's house and was just hanging out, got a chance to hang out. And back in the day, we used to have a lot of sessions and rehearsals at Kim's house. He had a nice piano and a big room, and he lived up in the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah.
And
Starting screensaver.
anyway, he I went and I sat down at his piano,
Yeah.
and I was playing this tune that I had transcribed off of Bill Evans' recording.
Yeah.
And it was a Johnny Mandel tune that was very obscure, obscure tune. And he's in the next room, and he comes in quickly, he says, "What's that tune? What a great tune." And I said, "Well, it's a tune called Seascape by Johnny Mandel." And then Kim knew Johnny Mandel, and he had asked Johnny Mandel after that, what was the tune? And it was a tune that really never went anywhere, except it's a great tune. I think he wrote it for a movie or something like that. Or
Sure.
anyway, so Kim runs and gets his music paper, and he comes in. He says, "I want to write down the chord changes. That's a great tune." And so at the time, we were doing Jim Widener's jazz camps together in the summer in St. Louis, and we used to do some in Springfield. We even did them in Kansas City a couple of times. And so I show up at the camp. This is 6 months later.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Kim would always bring music for the band to play on the concerts, right? And Kim's music was always challenging and very, very unique composer. And and so he passes out this chart. The tune was called Seascape, right?
Yeah.
He passes out the chart, and it's a feature for me. And so we're going to play that because
That's
I
cool.
just kind of he was a great friend and he passed away, and I kind of want to do a couple of the things that he did for me. So
Yeah.
so
Y-
anyway,
every time we talk about these gigs that you have, I always think about when I'm driving down the highway and those flocks of birds that kind of go around and it all comes together. It's like this perfect formation. It's a little jagged like jazz can be, but it all comes together. These gigs just come together. You get these stellar lineups. How long does this take? How does this happen?
well, it doesn't take that long. I mean, because I come to Kansas City often,
Yeah.
and I'm from Kansas City, I still I know, and the musical community, the jazz community, it's a small world,
Yeah.
and so, and then there are a lot of young guys on the scene. Like I played a gig with the way I met Ben was, I played a gig with Michael Eaton,
Yeah.
and Ben Turbert was on the gig. But then guys like Marty and Ken Keener, I've known for decades.
Yeah.
They were on the scene, and Marty spent some time in D.C. and in St. Louis, and then ultimately, well, he's teaching in Springfield now, but
Okay.
he comes to Kansas City a lot, and he always tell me not to. I don't want to get into a city rivalry here, but he loves the scene in Kansas City much more than the scene in St. Louis. So maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't want any
No,
offended from St. Louis, but anyway, and I played in St. Louis too. Yeah, and it's a different the jazz scene in Kansas City is much more vibrant, much more alive.
yeah.
There are more musicians
Yeah.
available,
Yeah.
and there's a flock of young players who are very good. Some of them went to school right there, like Sebastian, not Sebastian, Isaiah.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still in school. He was going to school at UMKC.
Yeah, he did a recital last year. Carl Allen was presiding over the
Right.
department, and yeah, he was playing. I remember seeing him about a year ago. Yeah, man, I went to St. Louis back in like 15 for a business trip, and I tried to catch some jazz, and all I could find was blues. But if you go to Kansas City any night, you're just full, any night of the week, you're full of jazz.
No, no. I mean uh, all everybody I know, they're working all the time, playing a lot around Kansas City. There's several venues,
Yeah,
and it's being supported, or it wouldn't happen. It means the public is supporting it. So it's great. And Kansas City's always been a great jazz town.
yeah,
When I was growing up there, man, there was a great scene, and all the guys like Gary Sibbles, Paul Smith, Frank Smith, Herman Bell, all these great local George Salisbury,
yeah,
and Arch Martin, Jess Cole, all these great guys were playing around town, and those are the guys I looked up to when I was a kid. And then,
yeah,
and of course, the jazz festival in the '60s was one of the best jazz festivals in the world.
yeah, yeah.
And I got to hear so many greats there. Cannonball, Clark Terry, all the, you know.
Yeah. There was an album that was unearthed by a blogger in Kansas City that Arch Martin made. And it was like the baton from like Bertha Cool was passed on to him. It just had this hip West Coast kind of like bebop vibe. It was so good, man. What a great cat.
Oh yeah, and he was well. He and my dad was a band director at Ruskin High School,
Yeah.
and he knew all. And he used to play gig. My dad was a trumpet player. He used to play gigs around Kansas City, and those guys were good friends. They would come and hang out at the house.
Yeah.
They influenced me too, because I was a young kid and I started getting into jazz, and yeah, Kansas City's always had a really really good jazz scene.
When you were big in the development early on when Pat Metheny was running around, does it sometimes just blow your mind how big and pervasive? Like I was just interviewing a pianist from South Korea, and she did classical training her whole life. She went to Berkeley, now she's in Brooklyn. And I was like, "Who was your influence?" And she's like, "Pat Metheny." And it's like the wield of influence that Pat has thrown over not just
Yeah.
jazz, but the world of music. Isn't it amazing sometimes to think about it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've told you before, he and I used to hang out in high school. I went to Ruskin. He was at Lee Summit,
Yeah,
maybe 15-minute drive.
yeah,
His folks lived right there right off that main drag, uh, in kind of the old Lee Summit,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
was before Lee Summit was what it was now.
yeah,
And I used to go over there 2, 3 times a week, and they had a finished basement, and we would have jam sessions down there
yeah,
2 or 3 times a week. And I feel like we learned from each other. We influenced each other. Uh, would turn me on to music. I would turn him on to this. Have you heard this? And yeah, it was a great experience.
yeah,
It was part of my development too. Was to hanging out with Pat and then some of the other guys we played with. Kevin Clements. I don't know if he's Kevin.
yeah,
He didn't stay in music, but he was a good bass player.
yeah,
And he ended up being a pilot for Northwest Airlines or something. But
yeah,
and Paul Smith,
yeah.
Tommy Ruskin, we
Man,
started playing with them, and back then those guys were in their 20s, and we thought, oh, these guys are the guys,
yeah.
these. And Paul and Tommy Ruskin, we would play with them some, and but yeah, I mean Pat's really, I mean he's possibly the most famous jazz musician ever,
Ever.
up there with Miles. I mean, in terms of his notoriety,
Yeah.
he's really. I tell my students, I teach at the new school, and a lot of times I'll tell them, well, I used to play in a band with Pat Metheny when we were in high school.
Yeah.
Well, really? That kind of.
That's it. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, I remember Tommy Ruskin when I was getting into jazz in the late 90s. I used to go to the basement of the Majestic, and Brahm would be playing with them. And Brahm would hop up from his piano and grab like 4 or 5 bottles and put them in between his fingers. And Tommy would go ding, 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 and he'd do this whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And we were just all like, oh my God, what is going on? It was like something I'd never seen. But when Tommy passed, there was a big bio that was written on him, and he was approached by Stan Getz, and he could have gone to New York. Because I always wondered, Tommy's acumen behind the kit was crazy. He was just so good at what he did. He just wanted to be local. He didn't. He was fine. He
Oh
didn't want to
yeah.
go. So
Like I remember the first jazz festival I went to. My dad took me. I was 14, and there were a lot of great local bands. Frank Smith had a trio.
yeah.
Uh, uh, Pete I, you remember Pete I?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he always had a trio. And those guys are always had steady gigs playing around town,
Yeah.
and they played together all the time, and then there was a quartet, Gary Civils, uh, Paul Smith, Wesley Knowles, and Tommy. I remember that band, hearing that band, and
Yeah.
thinking, "Wow, this guy, those are they're Kansas City royalty,
Yeah.
all these guys, really jazz royalty."
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah,
Good times.
Tommy is one of the first guys I ever heard play, and then
Yeah.
later on, I'm playing with him.
Yeah, totally. So I'm curious, when you come here during the holidays, it's at the end of a year, lots of things happen, and specifically for you this year, this has been quite an emotional year, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, for a lot of reasons. I mean, you know, personally, and then we're going through an election and all this stuff. What does it mean at the end of the year to be able to kind of come back to Kansas City, decompress, reconnect to your roots, and to get refreshed? What does that mean this year for you?
Well, it's always fun. I mean, we come out there because my partner Janie, her family. I still have a couple of cousins there, but uh, Janie, she has 2 sons and grandkids, and so we always come out there in the summer, and then we go during the holidays.
Yeah,
That's usually what we do.
yeah,
But it's always good. It's nice too. I'm so busy doing stuff here. I'm teaching. I'm playing. I'm doing, and when I come out there, and even though I'm playing gigs, it's still. I mean, yeah, I love to play. So anywhere I go, I want to play.
yeah,
And but yeah, it's relaxing. It's always good to hang out, with family, and watch football.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, we're big fans. We still follow Chiefs and the Royals.
And that's the weird thing about it. Like being in New York, being from here and being in New York, like I'm looking at Kansas City just in my timeline, and I just can't believe we're going to get the World Cup. The Chiefs have a dynasty. They're potentially, if they win this year, is going to be the best team ever in
Right,
football.
right.
More clubs are opening up. People are coming here. Adam Larson, other cats are like coming to Kansas
Oh,
City.
no, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Is it kind of weird being from the outside looking in, seeing how this town is growing?
Well, I mean, I like it. I
Yeah.
like it. It's like, and Kansas City has in terms of jazz too. I mean, I have a lot of musician friends here, some of my, colleagues and friends that I mean, they don't identify, like some of them do identify with sports because when you say Kansas City now, everybody knows about Patrick
Yeah.
Mahomes and all that.
Yeah.
But when you're talking jazz, I say I'm from Kansas City, and they know about Kansas City. They know about the scene that was there back in the day. Lester Young and all the guys and Count Basie coming through there in the 30s and 40s. And that's where it was really important in terms of the history of jazz.
Yeah.
And I teach a jazz history class at the new school,
Yeah.
and I talk about Kansas City and the importance of those days because my class starts during the bebop era, but those days were the pre-bebop, and they having all the jam sessions after hours and all that. So Lester Young,
Yeah.
Charlie Parker kind of got started, hanging out around there,
Yeah.
so and everybody knows Charlie Parker's from Kansas City, and so no, it's very cool, very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing now. Now, speaking of Pat's right up there. He's going to have statues. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's going to be the guy. So I want to make sure, again, you got 3 gigs. I will make sure to put it in the show notes, let everybody know. And then you got a new album. Is Bandcamp the best place for people to pick up? Setting
I'm not
standards?
doing people. I'm on Steeplechase,
Okay,
and he doesn't do Bandcamp.
gotcha. Okay,
He would actually, but he doesn't.
okay,
So I can bring some with me,
right
but
on.
you can also get them. The name of the standards record it's called Setting Standards.
Yeah,
It's just my name, Dave Scott, Setting Standards, and you can get it in the usual places. But it's also on the streaming services. You can buy it on iTunes, or you can also, if you want the hard CD, you can get it on Amazon and
okay,
some places like that. If you just Google it,
sure.
you can purchase hard copy, and I'll bring some with me.
Yeah, right on.
If anybody wants to buy it, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know.
I always like to steer people to actually physically buy because that benefits you the most because
It does.
streaming
It
just
does, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
not the
just
way.
want people to listen to it, though.
Yeah,
You know?
right. I dig it. Yeah. And yeah, with streaming, I know I'm a part of that, so I always love delving in. So but yeah, man, I'm looking forward to the shows. I can't wait to catch you live. It's always
Yeah.
great. This is our yearly like communal visitation moment to be like, hey, what's up? And checking in. So it's always good. And it's good after this pandemic brought Zoom to life, so I get to see everybody in living color, which is just so much better.
Yeah, right. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's good. But well, cool, Dave. Yeah. So I'll show you the shirt whenever we hook up.
Okay, yeah, right.
I'll bring it to the gig. So we'll
Great
be
to talk, though, Joe.
yeah, absolutely, Dave. Yeah, looking forward. Have a safe travel down here. Have a great visit, and we'll see you then.
We'll see you on the scene.
Yes, sir, man. Cheers.